Hi, I'm Camille Rose Garcia. We're here at my show, The Wonderful World of Dr. Decay, at the Helford Gallery in Los Angeles. The theme of this show, basically the work is from a book that I wrote and illustrated that was inspired by a week of 11 root canals, gum surgery, and then a weird psychotropic reaction to this pill. So it turned into this story that is like a dystopian fairy tale that I illustrated. And part of the show is a stop motion film I've been working on from the story as well. So we have work from the book and work from the stop motion film, you know, pieces of that. It's not all the way finished. We'll be working on it for a while, but it's kind of a childhood dream working in stop motion, so it's been really exciting. This is a different show for me because usually gallery shows you kind of work on one concept for the show, and then you have the show and then it's over. But I like the idea of building a bigger world, a longer world, a more narrative world that I could kind of expand on and turn into sort of books and films, and it kind of has a little bit of a bigger reach than just, you know, well, they still have a life beyond just the show, which is great. And I kind of came to that from illustrating another few fairy tales. I did Snow White, Alice in Wonderland, and Cinderella. And after I did Cinderella, I thought, you know, that's not a fairy tale I really relate to or really like. And I've always written little stories, so I thought, you know, the coolest thing would be to write my own fairy tale and then illustrate it. And the things that I love are like George Orwell, Aldous Huxley, William Burroughs. Kafka is a huge influence, Roald Dahl. So writers that sort of kind of write these stories that some are futuristic, these sort of more surrealistic worlds, but they have more of a social political message to them. The original work for the book is all done in watercolor. It's watercolor and gouache, and the palette for that was very like bright and pop art. Usually the paintings I do are very layered, they're like layered glazes. When you layer those transparent colors, they get darker and darker. So I usually do build up kind of a dark background and then put something on. So these, because I was working with a much lighter palette, it was a little bit of a different process. So that's kind of inspired a little bit of a different way of working, which is also fun. It is challenging to do watercolor. I don't do it very often. Still learning. This piece, this is where Alex and the cats are trying to escape from the hospital, and they think they found an exit. And this is a boat that they've knit. They got out, they're in this ocean, and this is the first time they meet Sandoval Ramos, and this is the ship that he's built to escape. So he comes up to them and basically says, this is not the way out, but I know the way out. His claw is blue, Alex's claw is red, but this is his claw. This is Sandoval's claw. So he wants his claw back, but he knows where his hands are at. So this is kind of like the two worlds meet right here. So the story is, this kid wakes up in a hospital with his hands replaced and his face removed. And this doctor with the tooth head, Dr. Decay, he's like, yeah, we're changing all your parts out. It's going to be great. He works for the sort of overlords that their whole goal is to kind of erase history and erase memory. So there's a combination of changing out a sense of identity through your hands and your face, and also changing your mind with psychotropic pills. So you sort of lose a memory, you have an amnesia. At the same time, they're changing people, they're also changing the world outside the hospital. And it's a kind of a surrealistic tale, so it's not based in the real world. So it's kind of like in the future, and they have some machines to do this. So a little bit 1984 vibes in there. Basically, Alex, who's the patient in the hospital, has to kind of figure out how to get out of this hospital and how to get his parts back, and then how to kind of keep a sense of identity in this world that's shifting under his feet. There's a few different worlds. It's told from the point of view of a few different characters. So La Sirena Fantasma is a ghost mermaid in the story, and she is Sandoval Ramos, who's the lobster. It's his dead lover. So every time he smokes his pipe, she comes out of the pipe and either plays a song or they talk. But he basically wants to save the ocean for her because it was her realm, her world. And so he's building this ship to go to the surface and tell the others what's happening at the bottom of the ocean. So basically that's sort of representative in our real world of other countries where terrible things are happening that we never hear about. So he's like a messenger coming to let others know, hey, here's what's going on here that we need to handle. So there's a whole underwater realm to this. So there's the hospital, and there's underwater, and then there's a third realm, which is the cats of the Midnight Moon. And they are cats that have been banished from the world, and they live underground, and they are like a revolutionary force. So they are trying to find a way out of the hospital. They live in the hospital but underground. So they're trying to get out of the hospital, find a way out, and save Alex because Pierre St. Clair, one of the cat characters, he was Alex's cat. The cat comes back to save him. So this is Pierre St. Clair. That is Alex's cat. He's the leader of the Cats of the Midnight Moon. This is Obsidian, who is the excellent lockpicker. The white cat is Alabaster. He's kind of the R2-D2 mastermind. Here's Alabaster sewing Alex's face back on. I don't usually draw buildings, so I had to draw the buildings and the sets for the animation, so that in turn inspired some of these newer paintings of with the hospital in the background. They were inspired by Antonio Gaudi's House of Bones. The interior of this building, it looks like you're inside a creature like bone. And so I like the idea that you feel like maybe you're inside of the tooth. So when you look at the hospital from the outside, that one, it's like an inverted tooth, the roots are going up. Of course, people are like, oh, penises. It's like, well, I guess maybe? Yeah, no, I know, but it's weird, just because
it could be balls. It's like
no,
anything.
I know, and there's like orifices, but yeah, it's because I draw everything really curvy. So anything pointy is like, okay. And then anything, I don't know, it's just funny. Because I draw that shape a lot, which is just really like more of an onion dome, teardrop kind of thing. But it was just pretty hilarious. This one is called Pod, for the Party of Deconstruction. And they're a party that came into power, and they're really like the fascist overlords. So Dr. Decay works for them. They have their grand plan of rearranging the world in a shape that suits them. So this one, the interesting thing about doing some of this work is, some of the characters, they're uglier. There's some horror. The story's not about beauty. The story is about ugliness under the surface of the beauty. There's some characters that it's like, I like drawing villains. I like drawing broken, ugly characters. I think it's fun. It's in contrast, the last show I did was mainly more about feminine power and feminine strength, and that was a different thing. But this is about our culture and the ugliness sort of underlying everything. It's just funny because I have a lot of sympathy for the ugly, broken characters. So Dr. Decay he's really my favorite. So anyway, this was, it was like, okay, what do those fascist overlords look like? And so, this whole thing of everyone gets their heads changed out to this sort of plastic thing. So I thought, well, you gotta have cube heads, box heads. And then of course the overlord is the all-seeing eye. And then, you have your lizard overlords. And everyone knows they're out there. My favorite character, Boris the Fly. Yeah, so Boris, he lives in the hospital. He's Dr. Decay's sidekick, but he actually hates him, but in a very passive-aggressive way. So he's a big book reader at a library. He likes dystopian fiction, as do I. And he's kind of a nihilist. But, Dr. Decay has to have a sidekick that doesn't like him very much. Anyway, so he's kind of, I don't know, well, he's a fly, and he's really kind of a shitty little fly. So we love him. Oh, a very important question you might have is, what is this cabinet? The book is called The Cabinet of Dr. Decay, and the cabinet is, the doctor has a secret cabinet. His job is to really destroy things from the old world, so no one has a memory of any of those things or places or oceans. He's been keeping some things and not destroying them. So he has a cabinet that's a secret door, and when you go in, there's an infinite number of other cabinets. And each of those cabinets has worlds that he's saved. So he's kind of being subversive and saving things. But the thing is, each of those cabinets is kind of like a portal. The reality of where you are at any one time in the hospital gets shifted. So you could go through a doorway, but end up back inside a cabinet. Because he's rearranged all the hallways and exits with his machines. So the hospital really represents kind of an overcomplicated system. It keeps growing. It keeps getting kind of rearranged. Like nobody really knows how to get out. And that's, again, sort of an allegory for our modern world. So here he is with one of his oceans he's saved, and that's a whale, tiny whale. Alex wakes up like this. That's the very first. And actually in the show, we're going to have text panels from the book, just to kind of give context to, what is this world. He wakes up, the very first thing is this one. He wakes up in the hospital with the claw and the egg beater and no face. Thusly, he must be reunited with his parts. But the thing about it is that it's funny and it's pretty. So that's the way. I don't do horror. I don't like to do horror in too obvious a way. I think that's kind of the way our society is you don't see the horror supporting everything. And all these floating things are pills floating everywhere. They're operating on this pill, and he's filled with teeth. So kind of just flipping it around like, there's something wrong with the pills. This story, it's called The Cabinet of Dr. Decay, is the book. And the roots, dental roots, really come from a very personal place, but I think it has kind of a universal feeling as well. So I have always grown up with terrible teeth. Every visit to the dentist is a nightmare and bad news. So in 1 week I had 11 root canals, and the last day, so what was scheduled was 11 root canals, and then on the Friday, gum surgery to lengthen the room to put the fake new teeth on or something. Apparently it was necessary. And then, then they were going to do the rest of the work after that. But I'm terrified of going under, so I asked them if I could be awake. They said yes, and we'll just give you a pill that's like a Valium. But I don't take any pills. I have a weird brain. What happened was, on the last day of the last root canals, it was the two front teeth were root canaled. It numbed my ocular nerve in one eye, so that when he was done, my eyes were focused in two different planes of reality. And then he just gave me an eye patch and said it'll go away in a couple hours. At the same time I had this eye patch and this weird vision, he administered the pill, the anti-anxiety pill, for me to go into the gum surgery. And the pill was Ativan, and it's supposed to be an anti-anxiety and make you feel, I don't know what it's supposed to make you feel like, but I had what they call an atypical reaction, so I had the exact opposite of what it's supposed to do. So it was kind of like someone gave me acid and a roofie at the same time. First of all, everything kind of got dark, like tunnel vision, and then I sort of spiraled down into a weird sad hole, and then I was throwing up and I was hallucinating, and I thought there were like maybe 20 different doctors in lab coats coming in and checking on me, and it just sort of felt like I was in Clockwork Orange, the scene with the eyes. There's no memory that I was in my body or doing anything, and yet I was awake. So there's amnesia, hallucinating, almost suicidal thoughts, or just dark, but very dark place. So that was like that for a whole day, and then the next day, I think I slept a whole day, and the third day I came out of it, and then the dentist said, well, okay, so we'll reschedule the gum surgery for the Monday. Which I did, because once I was in this hell, there's no coming out of it. Like, you literally have to proceed forward. That experience, it was combined with reading this New York Times article about people that are in the intensive care unit, the ICU, and they have these strange experiences from being kind of sleep deprived, from going through a trauma, and also being put on either anti-anxiety pills or painkillers. So they're in this weird in-between world, and they see a lot of spirits and strange occurrences that may or may not be real. So this kind of inspired after about a month, I just kind of wrote down, I just did a little sketch and then kind of wrote this story about this weird doctor with a tooth head. But I like the idea of it sort of being a microcosm. This world of Dr. Decay takes place in a hospital, and they're switching out faces and parts of people and kind of rearranging people and rearranging the world, you know, into a better place. But I like the idea of making sort of an allegory for really the effects of capitalism on the natural world and how we turn everything into a resource, which includes people, animals, the land base. So sort of this concept of like, everything's going to be better, you know, once we're done doing this. But everything always kind of gets worse.